I was doing what everybody told me to do, right? I was following all the rules, and he's talkative and he's outgoing and he can make eye contact and he can have a conversation with you. He can't be autistic. And it took us about 3 years to finally get an accurate diagnosis for him. And in that time, everyone just looks at you like you're a bad mom. And I'm over here like, I literally am doing everything I can for this child. And everyone is judging me and saying that I'm not enough.
Welcome to Hope Comes to Visit. I'm Danielle Elliott-Smith. Hope Comes to Visit is more than a podcast. It's a gathering place. It's a place for stories and heart conversations, and a place that we hope allows hope to visit just right on time. Today's guest is someone I am darn excited for you to meet. Karen Kossow is a friend, a new friend, a writer, a certified master life coach, and a neurodivergent mom of 2 autistic kids. After years of navigating caregiving, homeschooling, and burnout, Karen became deeply committed to helping overwhelmed parents build resilience and find self-care that works for their unique lives. She shares honest stories and gentle support on her Substack, the Self-Care Support Squad, creating space for parents to feel seen, supported, and a little less alone. Let's take a quick moment to thank the people that support and sponsor the podcast. When life takes an unexpected turn, you deserve someone who will stand beside you. St. Louis attorney Chris Dully offers experienced one-on-one legal defense. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com. That's DULLE lawfirm.com for a free consultation. Karen, thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
I am really excited to have this conversation. So this is, for me, I've had lots of conversations on the podcast about loss and about difficult times. And I love that we're going to have a conversation about life, about what it looks like to live authentically, to address life as it happens, and to help other people. And I was so drawn to your story when you first reached out. So I want to welcome you. So thank you for being here, for reaching out, and for taking the time with me today.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a challenge that more and more folks are becoming aware of neurodivergence in general as more and more kids are diagnosed. Parents are starting to realize that they themselves are also neurodivergent. And we're kind of in that sandwich generation of we're navigating supports for our kids. It's really difficult. And then we're kind of hitting middle-aged and realizing there's something going on for us as well. And then with the reframe of looking back at your whole life and seeing why some of the challenges you had were so challenging, then also looking forward to being like, this is why I have some of the family challenges that I have with my elder relations and my parents and maybe my grandparents, aunts and uncles. And it's a really interesting time to be going through this process of learning and growing and adapting. And I've found community is really hard for a lot of people in my position to maintain because we have so much going on in our lives, and making space for people to have that community is really important to me. And I've seen tremendous changes in people's lives and how they relate to themselves and their children and their parents and their families once they have the tools to be aware of the challenges they're facing and how to deal with them constructively.
You know, it's interesting. I feel as though you've somehow been sitting on my shoulder for the past few weeks when you talk about the middle age and the gap and the kids and the parents and I recently moved my dad from Florida to St. Louis, and I'm very firmly in that space between kids who have gone to college and recently coming to terms with my own diagnosis, which I had no idea my entire life, and paying such close attention to my dad and thinking, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Where did Where did that come from? And once I had my diagnosis, I called my daughter and I said, hey, and she said, I think I do too. And I said, I'm pretty sure you do. But it's just so interesting because we're able to have these conversations so much more openly now. So what first prompted you to create this community? So let's start there.
Sure. I have been building community for years. It's kind of what I do. And I had built a homeschooling community, and then I had worked with other autism parents in Idaho where I live. And it just felt like everyone was saying they wanted self-care, and everyone's saying, oh, it's so hard. And when the pandemic hit, our situation was unique because we went from having between 30 to 50 appointments every week between me and the two kids to having nothing. And we had already been homeschooling, so them being at home wasn't a change for us. Suddenly I had all this space and I didn't know what to do with it. And I am not a person who does well without something to do. Okay. So I just started diving into learning about copywriting and online businesses and coaching and working for other folks. And it gradually morphed into, I want to use the challenges I faced and the tools I've discovered to overcome them. And I want to make self-care something that is doable for parents if they can't leave the house, if they don't have childcare, when they're just faced with extraordinary levels of stress that no one person should have to be subjected to. And when they're in a position where this is the thing I like to say, you can leave. There is nothing stopping you. You can make that choice, but it feels like you can't, right? What does society say about a parent, especially a mom that walks away from their children? But it's that honest awareness that it is a choice, and you do wake up every day and you choose to parent them, and you choose to do what you can to be the best version of them, or yourself for them, rather. And this concept that our self-care doesn't look like what we hear mainstream self-care talk. It's not bubble baths. It's not going to the spa. I've never been able to take a weekend away with my girlfriends. I can, my kids are 11 and 15. I'm lucky I get one night a week out and about to, hang out with my mom friends. And trying to give people the tools so that they're not struggling as much. And it's, grown pretty well since then. And I'm excited to help support other parents.
So then what does self-care look like? So if we're boiling it down and we're saying, okay, so we're not pie in the sky, we're not elitists, you don't have the luxury of bubble baths and a master chef, and no one is coming to do for you.
Yes.
What do pockets of self-care for the real world look like?
For me, it's doing some vagus nerve care, which are some exercises. It's as simple as laying down on the floor and putting your legs up the wall. Do that for 5 minutes. That totally helps to reset your vagus nerve and to sort of help with some of the physical anxiety sensations that a lot of parents have to navigate. It's helping your body to reset after you've supported your child through a meltdown, which is a very stressful situation. Mm-hmm. For me, I do a lot of gratitude. Every time I get really angry or frustrated, I stop myself and say, what are 3 things I can be grateful for right now? The more you do that, it really retrains your brain to sort of focus on those types of things so that in the moment, instead of your brain automatically going to the stress response, after a while, you habituate yourself to look at the things to be grateful for, and it just helps to reset your brain. I make really healthy choices with my food, and I have not been able to drink for a very long time, just with the way my body processes alcohol. We are not friends. And
I'm sober, so
yes,
I'm in the same category.
Right. So oh my gosh, it is a coping mechanism I know a lot of parents fall into during stressful seasons of life. And when you're neurodivergent, you're parenting neurodivergent kids, that stressful season of life sometimes never ends, right? So it can just become really easy to sort of choose those numbing behaviors is how it always felt for me.
Right.
And to make different choices, things that let you show up the way that your kids need you, the way that you feel best about being in the universe, in the world as a parent. And again, things that you can do even if you can't get away from the kids, even if you can't leave home, even if you don't have support or backup or respite.
It's so interesting when you talk about gratitude, because gratitude has always been a huge focus for me. And I am very aware. One of the things that I always suggest to people about gratitude is that we don't automatically go, okay, shelter, food, that we truly think about some of the things that put a smile on your face, because there is a release in my system.
Yes.
I actually feel better physically if I allow myself to focus on the things that truly put a smile on my face, whether it's fresh flowers or the fact that I could feel my kitten curled up inside my knee this morning when I woke up, or that first sip of coffee when I'm waking up, or the fact that my alarm wasn't obnoxious when it went off. Whatever it is that I happen to really feel grateful for. And when I am working with people in recovery, I always talk about gratitude. And it's funny because I talk about it so much that people frequently give me a hard time in the, are you really that grateful type of tone? And I am, because it has long been a tool for me. It has long been something that I have had to focus on in order to keep myself on the right path. And I think that it's like you, I've used it for so long that it's by rote now. I write it down every day, but there are times when I have to put myself in that place, because otherwise I'd be angry.
Like looking in the mirror. Yeah, I get the pushback sometimes too of how can you really find things to be grateful for? And once you start doing it, you realize there are so many things to be grateful for. And often if I, do a social media post, Thankful Thursday, what's, one thing you're grateful for today? You do get folks that say, oh, I'm grateful for food, I'm grateful for shelter. And that's a wonderful place to start. Where I found like the really good, juicy vibes is with the little things like I'm grateful for my washer and dryer, because it's really wonderful to not have to deal with dirty laundry, going to the laundromat, or having to hang things up on a line outside to dry, right? I am grateful that we have a new physical therapist who's working with one of my kids, and the company they work for does home visits. So I have one less appointment I have to drive to each week. Even the really challenging things in our life, and not everything. I'm not one of those people that says everything happens for a reason and you have to find the meaning in it, right? I don't.
No, that's actually one of my least favorite phrases on the planet. And if it's said to me when I'm going through something, it is a struggle not to reflexively punch someone in the face. So
it's, for me personally, the way my brain works, I personally do like to find the reason for me that I've gone through a challenging circumstance. I would never put that on somebody else. It's one of the reasons why I started my business, right? Because I had always said that the challenges that we went through when my kids were younger, and they were pretty extreme, that it had to be for something. It had to be for a purpose greater than, I'm air quoting here, but just my personal growth, or just air quotes, getting the kids through it, right? I wanted to be able to use what I had learned to help others and to support other parents so that they wouldn't struggle as much. And when, your kid's having a meltdown, you're really struggling, in that moment to be able to have that reflex of saying, there is something here to be grateful for. Maybe it's that my kid didn't put a hole in the drywall, right? Or maybe it's that we did not have to call the police or go to the emergency room for support today. Even in the worst circumstances, I try to reflect gratitude to myself, because that's how I process my way through it. And I do see how for some folks that can be very off-putting.
Right.
but I know that it works for me. So it's a tool that I would share. It helps. You don't have to do it. And I would never push it on anyone, but it does make a difference, right? And in those goofy little things that maybe you don't notice.
Well, and so there are a couple of things that you said that I very much agree with that resonate for me. So one is that I don't ever push it on anyone else, right? I offer it as a suggestion, but I recognize that any suggestions anyone makes aren't necessarily the right fit for everyone, right? That's one of the beautiful things about this podcast, because we're talking to so many different people on any given day. I recognize that talking about neurodivergence may not be the right fit for someone today, but there may be a portion of our conversation where someone says, oh my gosh, I didn't know that, right? Or I might be talking about grief one day, or I might be talking about writing the next day, or I might be talking about cancer the next day, or there's just little bits and pieces. But even within, I was having a conversation with a woman about her birth experience. And during that conversation, she said something that I had no idea about. And I thought, wow, now even that's an aha moment for me. And maybe there's someone listening to that who thinks, well, I didn't have that exact experience, but I had something similar and I didn't correlate those two. And so my hope is that as people are listening, either they're going to hear something that resonates, or it will trigger something else, or they'll hear and they'll think someone else might know, this might resonate with a friend and they can pass it on. But I don't ever want people to feel like this is the only way we can do this. Like, if you are in recovery, the only way is AA. If you are in recovery, the only way is meditation or prayer. Or I want people to know that there are options, which is similar to what you were saying about the everything happens for a reason. I don't believe everything happens for a reason. I do believe, for me, that I'm supposed to figure out what the lesson is in what has happened. And so I'm supposed to figure out, what am I supposed to learn and what am I supposed to do with this? Because this has clearly been painful. And I know that when I go through something painful, I change, like it molds me in some way. And what is the molding doing to me? How am I being refined? And how am I changing, hopefully, for the better? Because the version of me right now wouldn't be who I am right now if I hadn't been refined in all the ways that I have over the course of these amazing and challenging experiences.
That's such a good way of looking at it. And I think I have a similar viewpoint. And it's all about having a big toolbox, right? With all the different things in there, and you have to find what works for you. And I think whether that's with self-care, whether it's with sobriety, which to me seems like a type of self-care, right? And it's a challenging road, and you've got to be mindful of what you're doing and how you're feeling and how things are going for you. And to me, parenting is similar as well, where you have a commitment to these humans, and you have to do the best for them, and part of that is showing up the best way you can, and that's about the choices that you make and the challenges that you face and how you respond to them. So I like having a lot of tools in my toolkit.
What do you think of your life experiences has been the sharpest tool for you?
Oh, that's my kids. And again, I don't go into like super specific details about them. I will say that they are a tremendous mirror, right? Both of them in their unique ways, because they have a very long list of diagnoses, the two of them, and the same diagnoses. And I actually have a lot of the same diagnoses as well. But it is so amazing to me how completely different those two kids are from each other. Oh my gosh, it's wild. And it just seems like, go a little woo for a second. I'm a Gemini, right? So to have the personality, like one's yin, one's yang, and like the two of them combined, just it's my whole personality come out in two separate individuals.
That's so funny.
It's wild. And as my teenager gets older and he settles more into what I lovingly refer to as his grumpy old man persona, he is just turning out to be very similar to me. And when I look back at the challenges we had when he was younger, because in reality, I can look back now and say it's because we do have the same personality. It's just I didn't have all the information about myself, and I didn't understand the operating system that my brain was working on as an autistic person, as a neurodivergent person. As I was living through a lot of trauma in the moment, but also growing up as an undiagnosed person, it really all makes sense now. And I can look back now and see how I made things harder for myself in the way that I was parenting him. But I was doing what everybody told me to do, right? I was following all the rules, and he's talkative and he's outgoing and he can make eye contact and he can have a conversation with you. He can't be autistic. And it took us about 3 years to finally get an accurate diagnosis for him. And in that time, everyone just looks at you like you're a bad mom. And I'm over here like, I literally am doing everything I can for this child. And everyone is judging me and saying that I'm not enough. And the sleep deprivation, unreal, like absolutely unreal. I went 5 years between the two kids, never having more than, it was longer than 5 years. It was like 7 or 8, never having more than 2 hours of sleep at a time. And that was the biggest refining experience, to be honest. So that's why one of the things I always focus on is whatever your family needs to do. And I think a lot of people need this permission. Whatever your family needs to do to get the most amount of sleep for the greatest number of people in your family, do it. I don't care what it is. As long as it's legal and it's reasonably safe, do it, right? Because the sleep is just such a huge challenge for families that are neurodivergent and living with autism, no matter what age or stage those autistic people are. So definitely parenting.
In creating this community for people who have similar challenges, similar struggles, knowing that you were in this place where you were being made to feel you were on the receiving end of, you are not enough, you're clearly a bad mom. And one of the motivating factors, I'm sure, in creating this community is to prevent other families, specifically mothers, from feeling that glare. What has been the greatest reward in creating this community? And have you felt as though you've been able to help other mothers through that by providing a mirror for them and helping them to see that they are enough, they are not alone, that it isn't about being a bad mom?
That is such a good question. When I hear parents say that their child is struggling less, that they're feeling better, that they are prioritizing their own needs, because that is something that does not get talked about very often. When you become a parent, usually you anticipate the kids are going to have really high needs that first year, and then gradually it'll be a slow weaning of responsibility for you as the parent. And it shifts and it changes, and, it goes on with the development of the child. When you have an autistic child, it's classified as a developmental delay. You don't really know at which point their development is going to stop, or it's going to be paused, or when they're going to pick up on things that they may be struggling with. And for me, what happened was it was just a really slow slide into having no boundaries with my children, right? Because especially as someone who did the attachment parenting thing when they were infants, which we would have really been in trouble if that hadn't been my plan, right? Like, these were Velcro children who needed to be with me constantly and be held and in the carrier and on-demand nursing and yada, yada, yada. But no one ever tells parents that I've been aware of how to sort of go from that into having a more boundaried approach to life. And when
Right.
you have a kid that's autistic, especially one that evades diagnoses for years, there comes a point where you look down at this 4-year-old human being and you're like, you can talk. I know you can go to the bathroom by yourself, but you refuse to. And they're just, they seem so difficult. And it is a challenge to parent through it. But then you're having people like, well, what's wrong with him or her? Why are they acting like that? Why are they having a hard time making friends? You may be losing parent friends because if your kid's in a stressful social situation and they act out in a way that other parents deem not appropriate,
Inappropriate, yep.
then they look at you like you're
Like
responsible. And it is
you're
your kid, right?
Like you're choosing not to parent, right?
Yes, and it's very multi-layered, and a lot of parents, find themselves, for the less obvious autistic kids, that 5, 6, 7-year age, not having a lot of friends, possibly having burned bridges with family, again, which comes into the not diagnosed elders being like, why can't you just make that kid behave?
Right.
You're lacking support. The programs to help take years to get into. It's just this really horrible situation. And I know that I have helped a lot of other parents. And like you said, it's usually moms that are coming to me for support. Navigate that without feeling alone, without feeling like they're doing something wrong. Because at the end of the day, if you're doing your best, it's all you can do. And a lot of these programs that are available, government programs, state programs, school programs, they're not advertised, right? No one knows where to go for help. And it's just a whole bunch of Facebook groups and parents, again, usually moms, trying to help and be like, this is the link you need to apply for this program, or this school has an amazing extended resource room. If you can get into that district, then they're going to be able to help and support you. And it's given me so much hope to see, just in the last 10 years or so that I've been involved in the community, how it's grown and how parents of younger kids are not having some of the same hurdles that I did as a newer mom. And there's just so much more awareness, and people are recognizing their own neurodivergence, and it doesn't feel so lonely anymore. And I think contributing to that, to having other people not feel so alone, is probably what makes me feel the best about what I've done.
That is extraordinary. I love how you have taken the experiences that you had and said, how can I pass it along to make life easier and more welcoming for people who are going through what can feel like some of the most isolating times. I mean, parenting young kids can feel isolating in and of itself if your child is the most normal on the planet, quote unquote, right? Like if you are going through just the traditional, do they sleep or not sleep? It's one of my original iterations in life was going into the mom blogging world. And I did that because I was in a mom's group with young kids and found myself surrounded by moms who were, when was the last time I showered? My kids won't eat their vegetables. My kids are always fighting. I don't get any time by myself. I'm always doing the wrong thing. And this was just a traditional group of women in the middle of a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. And it just felt like nobody knew how to adapt to the new normal of being a mom. And I thought, I want to remind moms, my original blog was Extraordinary Mommy, want to remind moms that what they're doing every day is extraordinary. If your child is going to bed at night and they know that they're safe and they're loved, you win. Because there's so many other things happening and we're constantly beating ourselves up, right? Adding in the additional layers of neurodivergence, which was not even a word I had heard in 2006, 2004, right? Because at that point, I just wanted to make sure I knew how to prop their heads up. Uh, like it definitely wasn't something that applied to me at the time. It wasn't something that I had on my radar for my kids. And I can remember at the time, new on Twitter, I asked every single day, like, what are you grateful for on Twitter? It was one of the things I became known for in the mom blogosphere, was asking, what are you grateful for? And it would take me hours to respond to everyone, right? Because that's back when Twitter was actually a conversation. And because we were talking before about the little things we're grateful for, right? And I remember a mom saying one time, I was told my autistic child would never speak, and today he said, Mama. And I mean, this is 20 years ago that I was given this response. And I thought, this is why I ask, right? Because we need that perspective.
We do. And that mom needed a place to celebrate a win.
Exactly.
Because
that's what I wanted. I wanted to give people the platform to say, you haven't, like maybe you just got a book deal and someone else said, I survived a heart attack 2 days ago. I mean, people would say some of the most extraordinary things. Some people said, my sister's getting married. And some people said, like, I got out of bed this morning. But I wanted people to have a place to say the thing that they needed to say. And that stuck with me, but it was one of the first times that I was aware of the power of an autism diagnosis, and also the power that we have as mothers to say, I don't accept what you're telling me my child is not capable of.
That is an amazing point. And the thing about autism is that it's a developmental delay. It does not mean that development is stopped. It does not mean that they're not capable of growing and learning and changing. And it really does not mean if someone is non-speaking that they are non-verbal. Like, there's a huge difference. There's a lot of autistics who are not able to speak, but they are able to communicate. There's a bunch of different ways to do it now. Communication devices, a PEX board, there's eye gaze tracking software for them to spell to communicate. There's a lot of different resources now. And what you're finding is that these individuals, some of them are children, some of them are adults now, we just assumed that they were not able to communicate, that they didn't have thoughts they were willing or able to share. And you find when you can find a way to connect with these people that they have as much to say as anybody else, and they are aware of what is being said around them. And one of the things that I really love to see as awareness of neurodiversity is growing is that the people, this is a little tricky, the people at both ends of the spectrum, right? You have the people who have very high support needs are getting the support that they need to have these communications with their caregivers, with other people in their lives, so that they can have a more engaged and more fulfilling life. You're also finding people like me on the opposite end of the spectrum who have lived a whole life without awareness of our brains and how they work. And we're gaining that awareness from, social media. A lot of it is the connectivity that we've had and the ideas that are being spread. And, people like me who kids get diagnosed and you're like, this is really challenging for me. And never stopping to realize that the same thing that's causing my child's challenges is causing my challenges with my child's challenges, right? And no one stopping to say like both of your kids are diagnosed. Hey, Karen, got time for a test? No one ever did that. Still, I mean, we're about 10 years post our first diagnosis for either of the kids. And, it really should be, if you have more than 2 kids that are diagnosed, someone needs to take a look at the family tree and the parents.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's an important thing.
It is.
That I think people need to hear, right?
Yeah.
If children are being diagnosed, I wouldn't have known is it a genetic component?
There definitely is a genetic component. And just to share a little bit more about my family, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a type of genetic collagen disorder. Unfortunately, I passed it on to both kids unknowingly. And autism and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome kind of go together like peas and carrots.
Do they really?
And
Okay.
and I don't fully understand the connection. I don't go into the medical side of autism support or diagnosis because that's a minefield I don't want to participate in.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So anyone that has hypermobility issues, has a family history of weird medical symptoms that seem unrelated, but you just feel like you come from a family of very unhealthy people. And if folks in your family start getting those autism diagnoses, take a look because there's definitely a genetic factor going on between the autism and the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and several of the other neurocomplex, neurospicy diagnoses.
That's really interesting. These are things I don't know, right? But to your point about social media opening these doors, I mean, these are so many of the places that we're learning so much about ourselves.
Yep.
And for me, it was a lot of putting together all of the symptoms, the symptomology, and that drew me to say, wait a second, if I have all of these and that adds up to a diagnosis, then, I go to a doctor and I say, okay. And the doctor says, well, yes, Danielle. And I had no idea, and it was interesting because my fiance, when I went to him after going through this process, he said, I knew on our first date. And I said, well, I mean, come on now. Okay. I had no idea, right?
We're often the last to know, which is funny. And then the flip side of that coin is then you look around and realize that the only friends, the only people you've ever really gravitated to are other neurocomplex or neurospicy people as well, which is wonderful because you feel seen and comfortable and at home with them. But it's also difficult because we are all struggling, right, to raise our spicy children and to navigate life with the ups and downs and challenges that unfortunately come with trying to navigate life with neurocomplex challenges. So it's, it's like a wake-up call, like you're in the Matrix or something and, taking the other pill and all of a sudden you can see all the things. But
what would you say to a family? So I had a friend who his son was recently given a diagnosis and it felt devastating to him. What would you say to someone? Because one of the things that I tried to say was, please don't allow a diagnosis to feel so fatalistic. I feel as though it's not as limiting as it sounds. Please, and neither of my children were diagnosed with anything young, but it felt as though he was crushed, and I don't know that I had the appropriate verbiage to tell him. I kept hearkening back to this woman who had shared this moment with me online, and I thought, don't let the doctors limit what your son is capable of. Don't let them tell you what he can do. And so I wanted to allow you to be more appropriately verbose in your encouragement.
the number one thing I would say is it is absolutely okay to grieve and to be sad for what you assumed would be their life, because parents have babies assuming they're going to be healthy. They're going to grow on that path of traditional childhood to teenagehood to adulthood. And anytime we deviate from that plan, it can be challenging. It is okay to be sad about that, right? And I think a lot of parents feel guilty for that. And there's going to be a lot of things you're going to feel guilty for as a parent. Your feelings should never be one of them. You can feel whatever you feel. Your actions are what matter. How you respond to those feelings matters. The other thing that I would say is you have to remember that it is a marathon and not a sprint. That you're going to be in the parenting game for probably a little bit longer than you planned on being actively involved. You may have to be a little bit more hands-on than you wanted. You have now a new full-time job, which is navigating therapies and appointments and schooling challenges. And it's okay to look at the totality of that and to be like, not necessarily what I signed up for. Take a breath, take a breather, and then get your head in the game. Because it is what your life is now. And there will be times where you feel like giving up. And I would encourage you to try to set some boundaries and some rules around what feels good for your family. In doing that, this is really important. If you ever have questions, that autism parenting spaces are a wonderful place to go for resources, to get support, to get help, to get ideas. If you ever question what you should be doing for your autistic child, the best place there's two really good places. Number one is that autistic child. Pay attention to what they need, pay attention to what works, pay attention to what lights them up. Mm-hmm. And if they're not able to kind of give you a heads up on what is working for them for whatever reason, talk to autistic adults. There are enough places online. There are enough people that are focused on helping parents parent. It's not the kind of work I do, but there's enough people who do that work that you can almost always find a good workaround solution. The last thing I would say is focus on strengths-based approaches, right? So don't listen to those doctors that say they're never going to speak. Get them into speech therapy, right? An autistic person intuitively doesn't really often understand what's going on with their body. And they, like, even now, I can never tell when I'm hungry. Is like a 47-year-old adult lady who's responsible for a whole house and 2 kids and a dog and I can feed everybody else. But do I ever stop and say, when was the last time you had food? No, I don't.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't do that at 52, so I don't.
They're going to need help for their whole life in various ways. They're never going to be a fully independent. Now, I say that and it sounds bad. When I say they're never going to be a fully independent person, I say it in the way of like none of us are ever truly independent. They may need reminder apps on their phone to eat, right? They may need someone to help pay their bills, not in the sense of earning money, but in reminding them to do it. Mm-hmm. They may need total supports the rest of their life. You really don't know. But getting appropriate therapy that meets their needs when they're younger goes a really long way towards supporting them. And the last thing I would say is, just because it is in the US at least, it really is the only thing that most doctors will tell parents to do. And it's ABA therapy, which is applied behavior analysis therapy. Mm-hmm. Be really aware of what you're getting yourself into with any agency that offers that to you. Mm-hmm. It is often not a great choice for a lot of families, and I don't think it should be anyone's first approach. Okay. It is what insurance pays for, and it's what's been studied and tested, but it has been very, very harmful to a lot of adult autistics. And before anyone does that, I would just encourage them to look into that a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah, that's good advice. Karen, how do you define hope?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. My former therapist, and former because she retired, we used to have this running joke about hope. And anytime I said I was hopeful, something horrible would happen. So for a long time, my body, my nervous system didn't even feel comfortable to hypothesize about hope.
That's funny.
Right now, hope feels like good things are going to happen. And it may not be what I want, but I'm hopeful that it's what I need and that we're on the right track for myself and for my kids and for my family. And we're doing the best we have with what we have. And hope just means that better things are going to be out there for us as we continue to just walk this path doing the best that we can.
I love that. I love that you spent time with me. Where can people find you, connect with you, be a part of this beautiful community you've created?
Yeah, thank you. It's the Self-Care Support Squad on Substack, and it's actually karenkossow.substack.com. And we are excited. I'm kind of changing things up a bit to shift my focus from just helping parents of neurodivergent kids to helping parents who probably also have neurodivergent kids, but navigating kind of this midlife transition and managing family relationships on both sides, your younger generation and your elder generation, when we're not always as well supported as we would like to be.
You're doing extraordinary work, and I am so grateful for the time you have taken to have conversation with me and putting yourself out there and making sure that people are feeling seen and loved and supported. And I, as a mother, that means so much. As a woman who loves to support other women and other mothers, I am incredibly grateful for the work you're doing. So thank you. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you. And friends, thank you for spending time with Karen and I today. I hope that Hope visited you well today, and that if our conversation resonated, you will turn around and share it with the people you know and love, and that you will come back and visit us again sometime soon. And between now and then, you will take very good care of yourself. Take care.
Naturally, it's important to thank the people who support and sponsor the podcast. This episode is supported by Chris Dully, a trusted criminal defense attorney and friend of mine here in St. Louis, who believes in second chances and solid representation. Whether you're facing a DWI, felony, or traffic issue, Chris handles your case personally, with clarity, compassion, and over 15 years of experience. When things feel uncertain, it helps to have someone steady in your corner. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com to schedule your free consultation.